Welcome, everybody. Lenny's coughing in the background, so you know he's alive. Anyway, I'm just giving Lenny the day off today, so let me know when you hear the sound on. And I see... I told you to wait until I'm ready for you to refresh. Just wait for a few seconds. It takes a little bit for it to start in the chat room. Okay. Tell me when you guys hear sound, and I'll have Lenny refresh on his phone so he could listen to me from the other room. Good morning, Meryl. Good morning, Eddie Heckman, Data Premier, Stardog, Timothy, my hooker. Does it sound weird when I call him my hooker? Okay. Anyway, I'm giving Lenny the day off. Today's our friend Dawn's birthday. Happy birthday to Dawn. And also, happy birthday to Lenny's kid, Mark. Let me help Lenny refresh so he can get out of my face real quick. Okay. Let's see. We got it. Now. Say happy birthday to Dawn, and also happy birthday to Lenny's kid, Mark. Let me help Lenny refresh so he can get out of my face. Okay. I really wish we would have made it for George and King Hap. I'm definitely going to listen to this one on demand because I just love that combo, and we really miss George around here doing podcasts. So thank you, George, for coming back, and thank you, King Hap, for all you've done. And tonight will be the Happy Hour Social Club right here at 7:30, as always. And you'll see Taco and King Hap and some other people. The chat room's been pretty fun lately. I love all the baseball talk going on. But the guys at Happy Hour, they talk about other sports too. They talk about betting. They talk about football, boxing, UFC, whatever it is. You name it, they talk about it. And it's a great show with lots of good energy. So today we're going to just... we're going to just do a spring training wrap up, and we're going to talk about spring training standout from each team. And before I get started with that, I just want to go over a couple of little news and notes that we have. The first one is about how long will week one last in fantasy, and with our leagues that we've done at Fantrax, and obviously there's a lot of different places you could be doing your leagues, ESPN, CBS, all over the map, but some of the leagues, week one will be 11 days long. That's not the case in our leagues. Our leagues is a 3-day week one. It starts Thursday and it ends Sunday. But week one could be in your league starting on tomorrow, March 30th, and running through Sunday, April 9th. So pay attention to that. Not that it really matters. I mean, you have what you have on your team. You're going to start your lineup. It's just, it would really be sucky if you can't change players around at least once during those 11 days. I know you guys remember 2 years ago when Cleveland traded Francisco Lindor to the New York Mets in a package that included shortstop Andres Gimenez, who's been absolutely amazing. Lindor signed a 10-year contract, $341 million with the Mets, and Andres Gimenez just signed a 7-year, $106 million contract to stay in Cleveland. He's only 24. Last year, he was a first-time All-Star and Gold Glove winner, and he put up 7.4 WAR, wins above replacement. And I think he's going to be excellent this year. Another person in Cleveland that's going to be excellent is Oscar Gonzalez, and we'll talk a little bit about him more. But another tidbit here is second baseman Nico Horner and the Cubbies are in agreement on a 3-year, $35 million contract extension. It buys out 1 year of free agency, but he's still going to hit the market at age 29. His final 2 arbitration years were priced at $15 million and a free agent year at $20 million. John Heyman is hearing, okay, John Heyman hears a lot of things, but he's hearing that the Pirates have been trying to extend their center fielder Brian Reynolds, which is interesting because they spent all offseason trying to unload him on another team. Anyway, now they're trying to extend him. He says that opening day seems to be the deadline, which is tomorrow, so there's still no word yet on O'Neal Cruz or other young players, but Cruz is interesting. Everybody was so hyped up on O'Neal Cruz heading into last season. He only has 10 hits this spring, but 4 of those 10 went for extra bases, and it looks like he's striking out less. He struck out 34.9% across 361 plate appearances last season in the majors. But when he was in the minors, he regularly kept his strikeouts within about the 25% range, right? That does not translate all the time. If you're striking out 25% of the time in the minors, there's a good chance you're going to strike out 30% in the majors. Although this spring, it looks like he's striking out less, and he has increased contact rate. So if that can carry over into the regular season, it's a good bet that he'll improve on his .233 batting average, also providing, of course, home runs and stolen bases from O'Neal Cruz. So all hope is not lost on this kid. Where's my coffee? Leonard, bring my coffee.
I got it.
Okay. Hobie Harris, 29. It looks like this guy, he's a right-handed pitcher for the Nationals, and he spent 8 years in the minor leagues with 4 different organizations, and now it looks like he finally made the 40-man roster to start the season. So Hobie Harris, 29 years old, after 8 years in the minors with 4 different organizations, he is now a Washington National to start the season. Thank you, Don. On Thursday, the White Sox are going to have their 10th different starting second baseman in the last 10 opening days. Every single year for the past 10 years, the White Sox have started the season with a different opening day second baseman. That's interesting, right? That's a good one. Anyway, I went through and I looked at all of the spring training stats. You know, they're just a ball of numbers. There's a lot of us just don't really care that much about spring training. But again, I think it's important to pay attention to certain players. Anthony Volpe is a good one that we're definitely going to bring up Volpe today. I hope Mitchell's here. And I know Merrill's here. Hello, Merrill. Let's get started with the Diamondbacks, though. So like I said, I went through and I looked at all the leaders on the spring training roster boards, like who had the most stolen bases, who had the most RBIs, who had the most home runs, and for each team I just did a player that stood out to me, and also went kind of like, there's an athletic article that we used as an outline here, but I definitely added my own players too, and so I just want to give credit where credit's due. The Athletic, all of their baseball writers put together, for each team it was a different writer, and they gave one player. But let's start with Arizona Diamondbacks and Gabriel Moreno. Gabriel Moreno. So this spring, he batted .357. He only struck out 4 times in 33 plate appearances, 3 home runs. The reason that the home runs are notable is because the biggest question for Gabriel Moreno heading into this spring is his power. Now, is he going to be a great catcher? Absolutely. He's only 23 years old with the Diamondbacks, and he is going to hit great as far as average goes. He's a very good hitter. Last year he hit .319. in 25 games, but he had only 2 extra base hits. So one reason why those 3 home runs were notable this spring is that if he continues to increase with his power, and you know, these players, 23 years old, they grow into power. You don't see players growing into speed, but you definitely see him filling out and getting stronger, and it's his defense behind the plate that's going to keep him in the games, for sure. His hit tool is good, especially relative to other catchers. Like I said, when we talk about his hit tool, we're talking about the amount that he strikes out, the number of hits that he gets, the ability to get on base, and all that is fine and dandy. But when we're in fantasy and we're looking for a catcher, we're used to looking for catchers with hitting power. And I just think it was impressive that he was able to hit 3 home runs this spring, and maybe, just maybe, he will grow into some power. For the Atlanta Braves, we talked a lot through the spring about Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd, mostly Jared Schuster. Both of them are lefties, and both of them came into spring training with no chance of making the opening day rotation, and now they're each going to make a start in the opening week, which is exciting. You know, Atlanta has a great way of bringing up young pitchers. Schuster is going to start the 3rd game of the season, and Dodd will be activated before his turn in Game 5. Schuster posted a 1.45 ERA in the Grapefruit League with 18 strikeouts and 4 walks in 18 2/3 innings. And Dodd did almost just as good with a 2 ERA, 20 strikeouts and 4 walks in 18 innings. So we're talking about the number 5 and 6 starting pitchers in Atlanta, but with Kyle Wright starting the season injured, you have these guys as 4 and 5 starters for Atlanta, which could be great. So let's see what else I got on these two. Now, both of them, they're going to have, so like we talk about how, these two guys are competing to get a spot in the rotation, but now it's going to be like spring training competition extended, because once Kyle Wright comes back, they're going to have to decide which one of these guys stays up and which one of them goes down, or just to the bullpen. Last season, Dodd, this is interesting, because if you look at his stats, you see like a bunch of levels of play. Last year he played at high A, double A, and triple A, but combined in the minor leagues last year across 3 levels, he did pitch 142 innings, which is great for a youngster. You don't see that very often. He had a 3.30 ERA, a 1.18 whip with 153 strikeouts in 142 innings and only 136 hits allowed. So, and then you have Schuster, who played at 2 levels last year. Schuster's 23, Dodd is 24. But if you look at their numbers, you say, okay, who's got the most staying power? I don't know. Last year, Schuster, he threw 130 innings too. These guys are very similar, but I have to say that Dodd actually had the better numbers if you combine their minor league levels all together. Dodd had a better season, but, who knows if that's going to transfer over. Anyway, both of these guys made it. That's exciting. Baltimore Orioles, Heston, how do you even pronounce KJ, okay? KJERSTAD. If I would have had more time, I would have actually looked up how to say this guy's name, but I don't know. It's Kjerstad, probably. Outfielder for the Orioles. He's 24 years old. He's a lefty. He was selected 2nd overall in the 2020 amateur draft, and he was named this past season in Arizona Fall League. I think he was the MVP. He had myocarditis in 20 and 21 and didn't make his pro debut till last year. So, but you don't get drafted that high in 20. He was drafted 2nd overall in 2020 amateur draft again. So, what do we have here? Here's the problem with this guy. He's blocked. He plays right field, and he's stuck behind Anthony Santander. So he was actually reassigned to minor league camp, but I bring him up, number one, because he was in the Athletic article. But this spring, he hit 4 home runs, batted .381, 12 runs in 42 at-bats. So he is definitely going places. And if there was any place for him to play, he might be up early. He only made it to A last year. So, like I said, he got drafted in 2020. But keep this guy on your radar. He had an excellent spring. And the problem is he just doesn't have anywhere to go because he's blocked by Santander. Boston Red Sox, are you here, King Hap? Let me check the chat room. I have the chat room in front of me. Let me say hi to you guys. Great show last night, King Hap. Let's talk about your Red Sox for a second, okay? How about Tristan Casas? Do you like him? You got to give somebody some credit on this team. Tristan Casas, we now know, is the opening day first baseman, and I really believe that he could be batting leadoff on this team. He's a huge part of the Red Sox plan both this year and into the future. What has he done this spring? Let's see. Well, let's talk about what he did. He entered Sunday's game against the Twins with a .360 batting average, a .400 on-base percentage, 3 home runs, over 50 plate appearances in 17 games. So, last season, what did he do? In the majors, he did not do well. Although he did hit 5 home runs and 76 at-bats, he hit .197. Last year in the minors, he hit .281 with 12 home runs and 41 RBIs and 278 at-bats. This guy is a lefty, and I believe that he's going to... It just seems so strange that he doesn't steal bases, Okay, he's not a huge base stealer at all. He stole one base all last year, and he's a power guy, but he can get on base. Last year, even though his batting average was only 197 in the majors, he had a 358 on base percentage, which says something about why they're batting him leadoff, even though he's a power hitter. Tristan Casas is the only Red Sox I could find that was worth talking about. Sorry, you people. Cubbies. We have Hayden Wesneski, starting pitcher. So he came into camp. Basically, his opening, he has a spot in the rotation to start the season, but this is because Kyle Hendricks is out. When Kyle Hendricks comes out, we're going to have to decide where this cat goes. This spring, he pitched 17 innings and struck out 22 batters, 2.12 ERA, a 1.12 WHIP. That's pretty good. Excellent, as a matter of fact. 22 Ks in 17 innings, 5 starts. He made it to the roster. He's the 5th starter on this Cubbies team, and they say that he has tremendous command of a plus sweeping slider and seems to have improved his fastball as well. We don't know for sure what's going to happen when Kyle Hendricks gets back, but for now, he's definitely fantasy relevant, and especially if you're on a dynasty league, because he's 24 years old. The White Sox, I loved watching this spring too. Daniel, if you're there, I loved watching the White Sox, okay? I thought Yoan Moncada did well, Lance Lynn, Tim Anderson, Jose Ruiz. They all had good World Baseball Classic performances. They were all off playing the World Baseball Classic. But Eloy, okay, he played for the Dominican Republic. He went 5 for 11, and then he came home and he hit .433 in the Cactus League. He didn't hit any home runs, or maybe like one home run. His power is not showing up yet, but his defense and durability are always question marks. So we know that when Eloy is healthy, we have the motto, Eloy is coming, and that's the thing. We just need to make sure that Eloy stays healthy. And I think they should put him more often at DH than not. I mean, he just runs that much more of a chance. When he's out in the right field trying to dive and shit, catching balls, he's probably a little more injury prone. But out of all the guys for the White Sox, I thought Eloy deserved to be on the list. Everybody loves Eloy. Hopefully he plays good. I mean, you know, they have Luis Robert, too, who a lot of people really love. Leonard has a huge man crush on Luis Robert, so we'll see what happens. For the Reds, who do we talk about for the Reds? Let's see what the Athletic wanted to talk about Christian Encarnacion Strand, and he was very impressive this spring. He hit 4 home runs and 27 plate appearances, but he's too young for fantasy this year. He's not relevant until maybe later in the year. He's going to see time in the minors at first base. But if you want to talk about fantasy importance, we should talk about Will Benson. Because Will Benson, the other day when I was doing the draft with Lenny, I saw up on the news that Benson was absolutely going to be starting in center field. He did not come into spring with a roster spot or regular playing time. And Nick Senzel did not appear likely to be ready for the start of the season. Joey Votto still could begin the year on the injured list, so Will Myers would move to first base. Anyway, here's the deal. Will Benson is the starting center fielder for the Cincinnati Reds. What can we say about him? Last year he hit 182 over 61 plate appearances. Okay, very bad. That was when he played for the Guardians. Now he plays for Cincinnati. He hit well in the minors. He hit .275 with a .424 on base percentage, 17 home runs, 16 stolen bases in 89 AAA games. So he did great in the minors. He's had a decent spring, and they now say you get to be on the roster. But Will Myers also had a decent spring. He's batting .255 with a home run. Then you have, I love Tyler Stevenson. He's going to play a couple different positions, mostly clearly behind the plate, but he bats in the middle of the lineup. If spring training is any indication, which I think it is, of where he's going to bat in the lineup. And then Jonathan India hit .308 this spring and stole 4 bases. So Jake Fraley, another guy on this team, stealing bases. Let me tell you, this Cincinnati team is going to run. I will tell you right now. You look at these, when I go in and I punch up the numbers for spring training and I put a filter in and I could see just the teams, I sort it by the number of at-bats that they had this spring, and then I kind of like do a little bit of looking around and see what I can find. But there is a lot of hitters on this Cincinnati team that are stealing a lot of bases this spring. Will Benson stole 6 bases this spring. Jake Fraley stole 5 bases. Jonathan India stole 4 bases. TJ Friedel, 4 bases. Barrero, 3 bases. I mean, these guys are stealing bases. And I would say, yes, we know overall the stolen bases are going to be up this year, no doubt about it, thanks to the rule changes and just these hitters, some of these teams, though, are more apt to run than others. And that's what I've been looking at this spring, because you definitely notice a ton more stolen bases. But it's really, a lot of these teams, it's team specific. Like the Reds are stealing a ton of bases. The White Sox were stealing a lot of bases. I haven't looked at them recently, so don't quote me on that. But do check it out, because really where the stolen base acumen comes from is the manager. Do the managers let these guys have a green light or not? Do they believe in stolen bases or not? The last manager for the White Sox was absolutely just old school and not into letting his guys steal bases. A lot of teams were like that. There's so much power going on. Why would you let these guys risking out by trying to steal bases? Especially guys that get caught stealing all the time. But some of these managers, they just love to let their guys run. They give them the green light and they see what they could do. I'm pretty sure Cincinnati is going to be one of these teams that loves to run. Will Benson, starting third center fielder for the Cincinnati Reds. Also, another thing about Will Benson, and probably part of the reason why he got his job, is that he's a lefty, and the Reds just don't have a lot of lefties in their lineup. So that's another reason that he's going to be getting playing time. Moving on to Cleveland. So with Cleveland, of course, the big star of the show was Josh Bell, batting. He only bat .234, but he did hit 4 home runs, and he drove in 10 runs. Hello, Snoopy. We have dogs over here. They're my friends. Okay? So, Josh Bell. And then the Athletic, the team, the player that they picked was Gabriel Arias. He had 44 at-bats this spring, but he didn't hit any home runs. He stole 4 bases. He stole 4 bases. .341 batting average. Gabriel Arias. Here's what the Athletic had to say about him. He's the Sultan of spring training, the Colossus of Cactus League clout. For the 3rd straight camp, Arias has torched spring pitching and dazzled defensively. What will that earn him? Well, how about a utility infielder job? Arias turned 23 last month. He could very well develop into an everyday shortstop at some point, but Cleveland's infield is crowded. They got Jose Ramirez, Andres Jimenez, and Ahmed Rosario's all starting on an everyday basis. Arias has attempted to make himself more versatile and therefore more valuable by learning first base and the outfield. More than anything, though, he's reminded the organization this spring that he's deserving of as many opportunities as the team can find for him. I love to talk about the Cleveland pitching. You got Shane Bieber, who threw 23 and a third innings, only allowed 4 earned runs. His ERA was 1.54 with the 25 strikeouts in 23 innings. The next most innings came to Zach Plesac, which tells me they're really trying to get him into the rotation somehow. Cal Quantrill, all right, he pitched 16 innings, 13 strikeouts. But I'm telling you, the big news here was Shane Bieber. Jeez Louise, he's just back to his old self for sure. And, he's had his ups and downs, but clearly he's still an excellent pitcher. 1 home run allowed, 13 hits allowed in 23 innings pitched. So that's impressive. Let me look at Gabriel Arias. Where is he on here? I didn't put the depth chart. I just put the depth chart. Yes, I did. I got the depth chart here. See, here's why. Gabriel Arias, he plays right field and left field. And he plays second base, third base. So he really is trying to be versatile. But this team has a set situation going on with the guys I already mentioned. I love Oscar Gonzalez this year. I think he's going to do well. Oscar Gonzalez had the most at-bats of anybody this spring for the Cleveland Guardians. Batted .241, 1 home run, and no stolen bases, but I like him. I think he's going to steal bases and hit homers, even though he didn't do it this spring. Moving on. Hello, Piggles. Okay. The Colorado Rockies, I love Elias. I really like Elias Diaz as a good value catcher. You could get him for very cheap. He bats near the middle of the lineup. But here's something I noticed when I was looking at the Colorado Rockies. Dinelson Lamet was pitching this spring. I don't know what they're going to do with him or where they're going to put him, but he pitched 9 innings and he had a 1 ERA and a .67 whip. Only 4 hits allowed in 9 innings. Now, let me explain something. We all know this. He also struck out 9. This guy's magic on the mound if he ever stays healthy, which I can't guarantee any of that. Dinelson Lamet hasn't been healthy for a long time. It seems like when he does be healthy, he gets hurt immediately. However, if he's healthy, he's going to pitch amazing. And I just don't see why they wouldn't try to put him in their rotation if they can. Or maybe he's just not sturdy enough to be in the rotation. Honestly, I don't know what they're doing with him. I honestly didn't even know he was on the Colorado Rockies, to be honest. But the guy who stood out the most on this team was German Marquez. 17 innings, 1 earned run, a .53 ERA, a .76 whip, and 20 strikeouts in 17 innings. German Marquez, is that going to help you be able to draft him and feel good about it? I don't know. You know what he's done. He's had some great seasons. He's also had some horrible seasons. It's like he's been in Colorado so long, we really don't know how he would be on any other team. But he's just worth bringing up because he was excellent this spring. And it's good. So let's talk about a couple of hitters on Colorado. C.J. Cron did not have a good spring, 212, batted .212. Michael Toglia had the most at-bats. He had 75 at-bats for this team. He hit 4 home runs, drove in 10, batted .307, and that was good. But like I said, I like Elias Diaz. He batted .297 this spring, and I'm telling you, he hits somewhere in the top 2/3 of the order, which is great for a catcher. Hitting in Colorado, no, it's not a great team, but just batting in Colorado is going to help him out. So he's a good catcher to target in fantasy. I know your drafts are all done, so this talking about drafting guys is over, right? The Detroit Tigers, Riley Green. Look at my boy Riley Green. 4 home runs, 14 RBIs, .308 batting average. Spencer Torkelson, not horrible. .268 batting average this spring. Only hit 1 home run, but we know he's going to get a chance to play every day. And the dimensions at Detroit have changed in favor of Spencer Torkelson, so we like it. The player that the athletic writers brought up in this specific team is Nick Matone. 5 home runs this spring, 8 RBIs, a .313 batting average, putting it on fire. I'll tell you what these guys said about him. They say Matt Vierling got a bit more attention when the Tigers traded Gregory Soto to the Phillies in exchange for 3 players in January. But in spring, Matone has looked like the headliner. Versatile infielder. He hit .313, 5 home runs. He's a good defender. He crushes fastballs and looks like Detroit's primary third baseman. And I know that's true because I looked at the depth chart, and that is true. They also say that he calls himself Wolfie, and he barks during games. So they say he brings a fun vibe to the clubhouse. Nick Matone, infielder for the Detroit Tigers. And I also noticed that Eduardo Rodriguez, and he went kind of high in one of the drafts, I noticed, and I said, why is he going so high in drafts? Oh, this was the AL-only auction that we just did. He actually went for quite a bit of money. I was like, what? Eduardo Rodriguez, 18 and a third innings pitched this spring, 21 strikeouts, a 1.47 ERA, and a 1.25 whip. So he pretty much crushed the spring, and that explains, I guess, why he was going for so much money at the draft. All right. Houston Astros, Ronel Blanco, 14 innings pitched, 17 Ks, a .63 ERA, and a .84 whip. Why do I bring this guy up? because the Athletic Stephen Nesbitt brought him up, and he says that this is what he says about Ronel Blanco. 29 years old. He debuted for the Astros last April, but he's mostly been in AAA Sugarland bullpen for the past 2 seasons. He's going to provide important depth this season for the Astros rotation that has already been tested by an injury to Lance McCullers, and he made a strong case to make the opening day roster as a swingman, or at least to be the first Sugarland starter called up when a need arises in the Astros rotation. So keep your eyes out for this guy, Ronel Blanco. He did have a great spring, I'll give him that. I really love Hunter Brown. He pitched, he didn't do that good this spring, but I really see great times ahead for Hunter Brown. Not Hunter Green, it's Hunter Brown. Let's say hi to the chat room. All right. It says Jurickson Profar, his visa issues are resolved. He resolved his visa issues yesterday, and he's on his way to join the Rockies in Arizona, so that's good. Hello, Big Al, Eddie Heckman, King Hap. I hope you guys keep chatting. There's 29 people here. That's good. All right, moving on. You know my favorite sleeper of the year is Franmil Reyes, okay? And he had a great spring. Franmil Reyes had the most at-bats of anybody on the Royals this spring. Batted .340 with 12 RBIs, 3 home runs, 9 runs, and he's going to be on the opening day roster, I'm pretty sure. He had more at-bats than Hunter Dozier, who Lenny really likes, and Hunter Dozier did okay. He hit 3 home runs as well. Drove in 5, 273 batting average. So between these Franmil and Hunter Dozier, we're big Kansas City fans this year. You remember when Franmil hit all those home runs, right? And it wasn't just a fluke. This guy has a lot of power. But the player that was brought up by the Athletic writers is Michael Massey, second baseman. In 43 at-bats this spring, he hit 5 home runs and drove in 13, batted .279 with 2 stolen bases. And here's what the Athletic says about Michael Massey. I see the Athletic is talking about Franmil. Anyways, if you're a Royals fan looking for some encouraging signs for the long term, look no further than Massey, who is consistently barreling baseballs and hitting for power and average. He turned 25 this month, and he could be the Royals starter at second base after he debuted last year. And I will tell you right now that Michael Massey is the starting second baseman according to RotoWire depth charts, and he's a lefty. Los Angeles Angels. Who do we like on this team? Of course, how could I lead out Reed Detmers, who pitched more innings than any other pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels this spring. And I will give King Turd the most credit for this because he sent me a message a while back, and we've been talking about Reed Detmers ever since. He had a 3.50 ERA, 27 strikeouts in 20 innings. One thing I noticed when I started reading up about him is that his velocity has gone up a couple notches this spring in compared to what he did last year. Actually, last year his velocity went up. Now it's up even higher. So it's excellent. I also noticed that Carlos Estevez had a horrible spring. What does that mean? You know, he's supposed to be the closer in LA, but at least 4 different American League teams, managers has come out and said they are not starting the season with a named closer. They will closer by committee, and they will give it to whoever gets the job done, which is smart. But in 7 2/3 innings this spring, Carlos Estevez did not solidify his job. He had 10 walks and 11 strikeouts. 10 walks in 7 innings. That's just ridiculous. So, yes, I know you don't have to be perfect in spring, but could you at least throw the ball over the plate so the guy doesn't walk every time he gets up there? Jeez Louise, it's ridiculous. Jimmy Herget, he's the next guy in line. He's going to be part of a closer by committee, probably, if Estevez doesn't get his stuff together. He threw 5 2/3 innings, and he had a 1.59 ERA and a 1.24 WHIP. So that's the deal. He struck out 11. No, he struck out 9 and he walked 2. I don't know who's going to take this job for the Angels, but I thought it was important to bring up. The Los Angeles Dodgers. James Outman is the winner of the Los Angeles Dodgers Spring Training Star, of course. Although, I have to give a little credit to J.D. Martinez, who batted, he didn't have a great average, but he still hit the ball. He had 56 at-bats, so he was out there playing all the time. He's going to get to play DH, you know. And James Outman, he plays all over the place. Outman, he can play center, left, and right. For sure. I think he got a starting job on, he's going to stay up with the club. And basically, here's what they say about him. It seems like Outman just hasn't stopped hitting since undergoing a swing overhaul during the pandemic that wiped out the 2020 minor league season. So he basically spent the whole 2020 season not playing baseball, but working on his swing. And then when he came up to the big leagues, he had a brief big league debut last July, and it continued with his swing. Basically, his production has forced the Dodgers' hand. He broke camp with the team, and he might be the best choice to be their opening day center fielder. But like I said, he can play all three outfield spots, and he is listed as the opening day center fielder for the Dodgers, which pushes Chris Taylor down the ladder. Let's see. Another people on the Dodgers that I would like to touch on is Evan Phillips and Brusdar Graterol. I've been pushing Evan Phillips to everybody this spring, and I do think he's going to get the job, but I have to say Brusdar Graterol gave him a run for his money this spring. Both of these two closers had a 0 ERA all spring. Evan Phillips threw 7 innings, and Brusdar Graterol also threw 7 innings. Neither of these guys allowed 1 earned run. Evan Phillips struck out 5. Brusdar Graterol struck out 8. And I would say these two guys are both going to get saves clearly. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Evan Phillips, but how can you argue with Brusdar Graterol, who was excellent? And last year, Phillips in the majors had a 1.14 ERA and a .76 whip. And if you were to look at these guys' stats going into spring, I mean, Evan Phillips was clearly the better pitcher of the two. But Brusdar Graterol did throw 49 innings last season, and he had a 3.26 ERA and a .99 whip. So both of these guys are good. I think that one of them is going to get to come in when the game's on the line, like the effector. The other one's going to be the closer. But they'll probably both share saves. So you're going to get saves from both of these guys. Moving on to the Marlins here. Jesus Sanchez, he was competing with Brian De La Cruz for the lion's share of the left field playing time. And Brian De La Cruz did not have that great of a spring. He only hit 1 home run and stole 1 base in 46 at-bats, while Jesus Sanchez hit no home runs and stole 3 bases, batting .302. And this is what Eno Saris says about Jesus Sanchez. You'd maybe like it to come with better contact. He's striking out a little more this spring than he did last year, and it would have been nice to improve on last year's rate. But Sanchez racked up the hits for the Marlins this spring, which is good because he's out of options and going up against Brian De La Cruz for the lion's share of left field playing time. Brian De La Cruz has been struggling and bats right-handed and has an option still, so Sanchez has probably played his way into the starting lineup on opening day for the Marlins. I know a lot of you like Brian De La Cruz, but like Eno points out, Jesus Sanchez bats lefty, and that is going to give him an advantage because the Miami Marlins need the lefty in their lineup. This spring, for the pitchers in Miami, Jesus Luzardo leads the way with 18 2/3 innings pitched, 5 games started, 4.34 ERA, but still he struck out 19, and I think Luzardo could actually have a career season this year. He's finally ready for that. Trevor Rogers, we were watching a lot. He had quite a string of good starts this spring before he blew up, and it forced his ERA up to 5. But still, he struck out 17 in 18 innings, and that was pretty good. And then you have Edward Cabrera, who I believe is he had one of the best springs in all of baseball. 15 innings, 1.8 ERA, 14 strikeouts, and he is is going to start the third game of the season. So Edward Cabrera is making the list here for opening day. Number three starter. Moving on to Milwaukee Brewers. Mike Brosseau. How do we not bring up Mike Brosseau, right? First of all, he could play first base, second base, third base, shortstop. This guy plays all over the infield, no doubt about it. And even though the Brewers have a crowded infield, they don't have as crowded of an infield as they do for an outfield, I'll tell you that. They have no problems over here with depth. That's for sure. He was coming into the season basically fighting for a spot. We don't know where he's going to play. The Brewers' depth chart still shows him not having a starting job, but how can you deny what he did this spring? This spring in 32 at-bats, he hit 6 home runs, drove in 14 runs, stole 2 bases, and batted .375. That's the type of play this spring that's going to get you on the raw. You know, he's going to be in the lineup because if you hit, you stay in the lineup. That's how it works. And like I said, he's not starting any one of these positions, but he is versatile as all versatility could be, okay? So Mike Brosseau gets the nod. Minnesota Twins sent down Bailey Ober, but he's the one that the Athletic Aaron Gleeman spoke about having such a great camp. He knew that he was 6th on the depth chart for a 5-man rotation heading into the spring. This guy is 6'9", okay? So it says that he was a soft-tossing control artist in the minors, but he's topped 94 miles an hour often this spring. He added velocity, and he's turned his slider into a swing-and-miss weapon. He was already good. He had a 3.82 ERA and 147 strikeouts and 148 career innings, but his raw stuff has jumped dramatically. Now he just needs a spot in the rotation to show it off, and like I said, he was sent to the minors a couple days ago, so you have Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Tyler Mahle, and Kenta Maeda. Also, Chris Paddock out for God knows how long, and Josh Winder out too. Where's Byron Buxton? I said, where's Byron Buxton? I don't see any stats for Byron Buxton this spring. Well, you know he underwent arthroscopic knee surgery last September, so he's actually been in the minor league spring training getting workouts there. So this spring he only had 8 at-bats for the Twins in spring training, and he hit 125, so it wasn't great, but we know what Buxton is capable of. Can the guy ever get 500 at-bats in his career? Right now he's 28 years old, and he's never had even close to 500 at-bats in a season. But I'll tell you what, last year he had 28 homers and 6 stolen bases. You're going to see the stolen bases continue to drop down as he gets older, but he'll still steal bases. I kind of wish he wouldn't, because this is the type of guy that he puts himself at risk every time he tries to run somewhere. He runs into walls, which is fine because now they're going to use him at DH. That's exciting because you won't see Buxton running into walls anymore and being out for half the season. He could still find a way to get hurt, but the DH spot is going to help him. King Hap brings that up a lot. He loves Buxton. I just feel like sometimes his hype is more than his production because fantasy people just love this guy. And he's fun to watch, but he probably fluctuates in ADP more than any player I've ever seen over the years. The New York Mets. The Athletic brings up David Peterson here. Now, the Mets did inform David Peterson on Monday that he will open the season as their number 5 starter. He had some control problems this spring. He walked 8 batters over 12 innings, but he didn't allow any runs, and he held opposing hitters to a .028 average while striking out 13 in 12 innings. So he was pretty solid floating between the rotation and the bullpen last year for the Mets. He had a 3.83 ERA, a 1.33 whip. I'm sorry, that doesn't sound good to me at all. But now he has a clear path to the starting role for the foreseeable future, and we'll see what happens. He could be, I highly doubt he was being drafted very much. I don't have his ADP, but 12 innings, like I said, this spring. And you know, you're not going to, he is a 5th starter, but can I tell you this? He only threw 105 innings last year, and that's not enough to be a starter. So you can expect definitely, if he even stays in the rotation, which I can't say I'm too excited like this Tim Britton of The Athletic is excited about him. They did say that this is what Tim Britton says about him. He's been lights out all spring, looking dominant outside of one brief bout with his command. He allowed just one hit in 12 innings. That's unbelievable, really. Jose Quintana out for at least the first half of the season. An enormous opportunity has opened up for Peterson to entrench himself in the rotation, and he's positioned himself to capitalize on it. None of his former stats tell me that he's anywhere near capitalizing on anything, because this guy does not have good stats at all. He did well 1 year in the minors at high A. But ever since then, his ERA is always in the 4s or the 5s. And for me, I would just rather have nobody in that spot, okay? Because you can't get enough strikeouts to justify a 5 ERA in your rotation in fantasy. That's how I feel about it. But clearly, you know, they were for the Athletic for a reason. They're the best of the best. So who am I to argue with that, right? All right, Anthony Volpe, the star of the spring. He actually made the roster. That's unbelievable. And you know what that means for me? I'm so annoyed about this, because here's me, the guy that drafted Oswaldo Peraza, who's super speedy and feels like he's ready to be in the majors. He's got more experience. He played at more levels, had more at-bats, and just in general has more experience to be the shortstop for the Yankees. But what do you know? He gets sent down for this Volpe cat who everybody is in love with. He had 56 at-bats this spring. He hit 304. I'm not denying that Volpe had a great spring, okay? But he only played 22 games at AAA. He batted .229 at AAA, so it wasn't impressive. He hit 2 home runs and stole 5 bases, but he got caught stealing twice. So it's not, these numbers are not out of control. Great. I know he's going to be a great prospect and all this hype around him, but I'm sorry, I'm a little bitter about my boy Peraza being sent down. So he's the Yankees' number 1 prospect. He only had 99 bats in AAA this past season after spending most of the year at AA. The Yankees are notoriously cautious about calling up prospects, but Volpe made a strong enough case for the organization to break its historical pattern. Yeah, okay, let's just tell the truth here. The Yankees aren't notoriously cautious. They're notoriously cautious about losing a year of control of these players, so they leave them down just like every other team does. This has nothing to do with being cautious about their players. They want to have more control over them for another year. Why would you give up a full year just to have the kid come up for start opening day? But that's what they're doing. Now, my boy Peraza got sent down, and the Yankees manager says he's going to play shortstop and second base. He ruled out third base for Peraza, but clearly they're trying to get him to be more versatile so they could get him a spot on the roster, because obviously the Yankees went from having no shortstop to having like too many shortstops. And that's that. I just think he was the closer one. He batted .306 in the majors last year. He played 18 games for the Yankees, and he batted .306. And he earned his way onto the roster, but clearly everybody loves Volpe enough, and that's that. And I'm bitter, as you could tell. Oakland Athletics, amazingly enough, one of the best hitters this spring, or one of the best, one of the best hitters this spring is Esteury Ruiz, plays center field for the Oakland Athletics. Between AA and AAA last year, this guy hit .332 with a .447 on-base percentage. He hit 16 home runs, and he stole freaking 85 bases, okay, on 99 attempts in 114 games. He batted .171, though. When he came up to the majors, he had 36 major league plate appearances, and he only batted .171. So it wasn't great, but he's only 24 now, and that was his first debut in the majors. And now he's going to get playing time for sure. Anyway, he stole freaking 85 bases last year. I can't get over that. He stole 85 bases between AA and AAA. So here he is. He's an outfielder for the Oakland Athletics. He's going to be their starting center fielder. So that's what is going on right here. He could steal more bases than anybody. I had no idea until I looked this up. I just want to reiterate, he stole freaking 85 bases last year, okay? That's it. Philadelphia Phillies. Jake Cave is the one that we're going to talk about now. Jake Cave. Jake Cave. All right. Spring training, 52 at-bats, 3 home runs, 14 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, a .462 batting average. Unbelievable. He actually played for Minnesota last year, and really, since 2018, Jay Cave has been playing for Minnesota, but he was claimed off waivers by Philadelphia in December, and now nobody had more hits this spring than Jake Cave. He had the most hits of anybody in all of baseball. 10 of his 22 hits were for extra bases, and he hit the ball hard for the duration of spring training. He entered Phillies camp in a competition for a bench job, but it looks like he's going to be the starting left fielder on opening day. He was trending well last season. He lowered his strikeout rate. He raised his walk rate. He hit the ball harder, but he did not have the results to show for it. The Phillies claimed him off waivers, and he could be a nice piece for him. I will tell you that Jake Cave can play all 3 outfield positions, and he is listed on RotoWire depth charts as the starting right fielder for the Phillies. He could probably also be designated hitter sometimes, but I think they'll put Nick Castellanos as designated hitter for the most part. Anyway, what an impressive spring from Jake Cave. Now, in all of his years since 2018, he is 29 now. He'll be 30 this year. Last year when he played, he was 29. In 177 plate appearances, he hit 5 home runs and stole 2 bases. He did that crap this spring alone. So we'll see if he's got it, if he put it together. But he's definitely a starting spot for the Phillies, and look at their lineup. It's great. I love Derek Hall. I would have brought him up if he was under the radar more, but Derek Hall is definitely going to get a spot now. He was going to get playing time no matter what because Bryce Harper is out, but now that Rhys Hoskins is injured, he is going to flourish this year. Derek Hall could be one of the greatest players, and you probably drafted him super late. See, this is one great thing about drafting early. I know George took him in our NL only, and it was an excellent pick. And it was in like round 27 or something like that. So, Pittsburgh Pirates, we're almost done here. I have a couple more teams and 8 minutes left, okay? I'm ready to be done. Travis Swaggerty, 10th overall pick in 2018, hasn't become the slugger everyone expected. He showed this spring that he could be a productive clutch hitter. He had singles and doubles into the gaps. Who else are you going to talk about on the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? Swaggerty. Friggin' Swaggerty, dude. Okay? Here's what he did this spring. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, a stolen base, batting .379. Last year in the minors, he's 25 this year. Last year in the minors, in 398 at-bats, he hit 9 home runs and stole 20 bases. He got caught stealing 5 times. His batting average is .254. And it looks like, I don't know where he is on the depth charts, to be honest with you. I don't see him on the depth charts. He's a prospect still. This is interesting. Swaggerty put together an impressive spring, but he was always on the outside looking in. It says he's going to play for the International League. So I don't know. Forget Swaggerty. Forget the Pirates in general, okay? Just forget it. San Diego Padres, Jake Cronenworth, first baseman. He also plays second base. He can play shortstop. He can play left field. And Cronenworth, spring training, 48 at-bats, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, batted .396. But he's pretty versatile. Last year he played 20 games at first and 147 at second. He also played shortstop 9 times. So he's definitely versatile. Cronenworth, let's see what they say about him at The Athletic. Dennis Lynn says, Cronenworth is the lone number of the starting infield who didn't leave camp to play the World Baseball Classic. He's also been the team's most consistent performer throughout the spring. Well, hello, I wonder why. He's the most consistent performer because he's the only freaking hitter on the infield that didn't go play at the World Baseball Classic. So, okay, moving on. Frick, Cronenworth. I love Machado. That's who I love on the Padres. The San Francisco Giants. You have a lot of... Look, I'm not even going to talk about this that much because I really believe in Anthony DeSclafani. They want to talk about Sean Hill, right-handed pitcher for the Giants, and he's a bullpen guy, but this guy is 6'11", power pitcher. He added 15 pounds of muscle this offseason, but it basically says right off the bat, while other teams scramble for a 5th or 4th starter who won't pitch them out of games by the 3rd inning, the Giants run 7 deep, and that's before you get to this guy. Hell, Hjelle. He's reinventing himself as a power pitcher. So he's going to get a chance to be a long reliever, but I'm not putting him in front of my boy, DeSclafani. There's a lot. Even Jake Junis had a decent spring. This freaking Giants rotation is deep as it could possibly be. They got Alex Wood and Alex Cobb, two guys that are probably going to get hurt before the first month of the season is over. So, obviously this kid Hell is great. He's a big boy, but also Ross Stripling, Logan Webb, Sean Manaea, Alex Wood, Alex Cobb, DeSclafani. I never leave DeSclafani out of this talk because this is my boy this year. I think he's going to be a sleeper. The Seattle Mariners, Robbie Ray, his velocity is up. Excellent. His fastball averaged 96 miles an hour this spring. Unbelievable. He said that he wasn't happy with the way his season ended last year, and he got after it this winter, so he's been working all year long to get back to his 2021 Cy Young award-winning form. But how can you even talk about the Mariners without bringing up Kelenic? Okay, Kelenic has had an excellent spring, and it is time for this kid to shine. In 51 at-bats, he hit 4 home runs, drove in 10, stole 3 bases. He's everything we expected him to be 2 years ago, batting .353 with a .389 on-base percentage. I think Kelenic should be talked about. Everybody knows about how good he's been doing. But listen to me when I say it's his year to shine. So if you took a chance drafting Kelenic this year and went against the grain, because really, I don't know how he is now. Most of my drafts were done a while ago when nobody was paying attention to Kelenic. And I only drafted him because I had no choice. But, okay. Anyways. Another thing here, St. Louis Cardinals, they talked about Mason Wynn. I like Mason Wynn, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him. He's a prospect, and he's probably not going to be up immediately. If you're in Dynasty, you already know about him. He had a great spring. He batted .333 with 2 homers and 4 stolen bases, but he's very young. He never made it past Double-A. Let's talk about Jordan Walker and Dylan Carlson, because I'm going to be willing to tell you, yes, I know the depth charts show Carlson as the odd man out, and he's a 4th outfielder now, and it's a bunch of BS if you ask me, because Carlson actually had a better spring than Jordan Walker. You will not see Jordan Walker on all of the spring training stats, even though he's like everybody loves him and he made the roster, and now all of a sudden he's playing right field instead of Dylan Carlson. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. I don't really get this whole thing because Dylan Carlson had a great spring. And he's still young. He had, in 51 at-bats, he had 10 runs, 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, and 2 stolen bases. Now he's got a more limited role on tap, and it just irks me to no end that they're giving up on this guy and letting some 20-year-old come in and be on the opening day roster when, this was Dylan Carlson just 2 years ago. Their numbers are almost exactly the same. When Dylan Carlson was coming up and he was 20 years old, he had the exact numbers that Jordan Walker has, and Jordan Walker is no better than he was at that age. And I would be willing to bet money that Jordan Walker does not continue what he did this spring, which, by the way, is not as good as what Dylan Carlson did. He also had 3 home runs in 65 at-bats, but Dylan Carlson's numbers are better. He drove in more runs. He scored more runs. And here we go with Jordan Walker taking over his spot. I know he's been disappointing to fantasy people, but it just irks me that, these youngsters, they get such hype. They don't pan out. Dylan Carlson did not just have a bad season. He also had things going on that affected him in his personal life. And I just think it's ridiculous. But, hey, it is what it is. Your boy Jordan Walker is going to get a chance, but don't be surprised if he turns out to be Dylan Carlson. Okay? Tampa Bay Rays, I love that Brandon Lowe is healthy. Brandon Lowe. One thing I want to point out with Brandon Lowe is that we were concerned about how healthy he was going to be going into the season, and we know when he's healthy, he hits for lots of power. This spring, he had an 18% strikeout rate, which is excellent, and that's the one thing I want you to note, is that Brandon Lowe is not only healthy this spring, but his strikeout percentage is good. He could have the best season of his career. Jose Siri, he's going to be the opening day starting center fielder. Jose Siri sold... Look at what he did. He stole freaking 10 bases this spring. He only hit .216, but he stole freaking 10 bases, okay? The guy steals bases like a madman, and he is going to be the opening day starting center fielder in Tampa. Oh, wait. Is that Houston? Tampa. He's on Tampa. Texas Rangers. The player of the year for the Texas Rangers this spring was Corey Seager. Jacob deGrom only had one start, but of course Seager is excellent this year. Malpal brought up that he could be the MVP. He could have a career season for sure. I'm not going to spend much time on him, but the Athletic writer did bring up Cole Ragans as a pitcher for the Texas Ranger. His fastball averaged 92.2 miles an hour last year, but this year it is consistently between 95 and 96, even touching 99 miles an hour this spring. The question is, what are the Rangers going to do with him as a starting pitcher, or is he going to be a bullpen option? And I will say he's listed as number 9 in the rotation. So he's not listed in the bullpen, but the rotation. You have Jake Odorizzi out, you have Glenn Otto out, so if you take those guys out, he would be listed number 7. But keep an eye on this guy. He had a great spring, 16 innings, 24 strikeouts in 16 innings. His ERA wasn't great, but he's striking out batters like crazy. And like the writer pointed out, his velocity has gone up several ticks. So keep an eye on this kid. As far as the Texas Rangers hitting, Bubba Thompson stole quite a bit of bases, 5 bases, and Mitch Garver hit 2 home runs. Corey Seager just crushed it, and he looks great, and he could have a career season too. Toronto Blue Jays, Bo Bichette takes the lead for this team. Bo Bichette had the most at-bats. He also had the best at-bats. He hit .315. He stole 3 bases, hit home runs, blah, blah, blah. But I will say Dalton Varsho, Lenny's been talking about him being overrated. I agree. He's being drafted way too early. He batted .196 this spring, and he's really not that much better than any other catcher out there, even though he does play outfield too. So, still, okay? The guy that pitched the best, look at, you see Kikuchi on here, dude. 20 innings and 2/3 pitched, 31 strikeouts. His ERA is .87. Lenny called out this guy early. I got to give him credit for pointing out Kikuchi because this was way before Kikuchi ever threw his first pitch in spring. So congratulations on Lenny for that one. I'm not going to give him credit for flexing, okay? Kevin Gausman, 13 2/3 innings, no earned runs, 18 strikeouts. Kevin Gausman. Josiah Gray, Nationals. This is our last team. Josiah Gray. He looks like he's number 1 on the starting rotation, but I heard that Patrick Corbin was going to be starting on opening day, so who knows. Anyway, he's a former top prospect. Josiah Gray tweaked his pitch mix, received positive results this spring. He only allowed 1 earned run in 16 1/3 innings, 5 Grapefruit League starts. He's now favoring his cutter over his 4-seamer that was hit very hard last season. So he actually gave up the most home runs in 22, league high. 24 of those home runs, 24 out of 38 home runs allowed were on 4-seamers. So like I said, he's favoring his cutter this year. He's also showed improved command this spring, which was another area of concern. We brought up Hobie Harris early in the notes because he made the roster too. He's also 29 years old, but he only allowed 1 run in his first 7 outings this spring, and he made the case of his very long-awaited MLB debut. Thanks so much for coming in today, everybody. Lenny will be back tomorrow. Today's our friend Don's birthday and also Mark Melnick's birthday today, so happy birthday to both of you important people in our lives. And that's it. Have a great day.